Hi friends, Rod here. Let me ask you a question. Have you seen the Netflix series Drive to Survive? Do you want to hear me and Zach record a special podcast talking just about it? Well, you can. All you need to do is go to superlicense.com.au and join the Superlicense Club at the $5 a month level. And you'll hear us talk all about it. Things like this.
It's not really about who's going to win the championship.
It's really like a 30 for 30 season, except every single episode is just about Formula One.
To see Esteban Ocon going through the paces and seeing him with his eyes closed doing the entire track, with just a little steering wheel in front of him, like I felt incredibly close, like probably closer than ever before to a Formula One driver.
That is why you get a filmmaker to make these and not a racer, not a race director, you know?
And we've got two great drivers, but Max Verstappen, he's magic. Oh my God.
All that and many minutes more. All you need to do is go to superlicense.com.au, click on the club link and join the Superlicense Club at the $5 a month level or above, and we will unlock all of the episodes of our special members-only podcast called Drift, including the episode covering Netflix Drive to Survive.
Why don't we have that all the time? Yeah.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Superlicense F1 podcast. I'm your tall drink of water. My name's Rodney.
I'm just a regular mug of filter coffee, Zachary Priest.
Surprise flair, I think he's going to be... That works for me. I like it. It gives you a little charge to start the show. Welcome, everybody. Austrian Grand Prix, Zach. Obviously, man, what a ripper. Everyone knows that this race was fantastic. A bit of controversy at the end. Potentially spoiled it for some people, but it's just good. The spell's been broken. It wasn't a Mercedes 1-2. It wasn't even a Mercedes win. So much to talk about. So much to get into. We're going to cover all the angles. We've got a super quiz coming up later. We've got a quick look at the Fantasy League, although, I don't know, I might just leave the room when we cover fantasy and let's leave it to you because it's slim pickings. Slim pickings, it's grim reading for me. But yeah, Zach, how has your week been? You said before that you've been catching up on the race a little bit. It was a bit of a disturbed watch for you.
Yeah, no, I was, I always imagined that I'll be able to watch the race when it's on a beautiful time on a weekend, and then life slightly gets in the way. But this time I was like, I'm going to be on a train coming back from Hampshire. I'm going to be able to watch it all because England is a small country. I imagine there will be 4G cell coverage that I can stream from my phone to my iPad the whole time, get a nice Sky Sports that I pay for, get a nice dose of Formula One on my train back. But of course, no, there is very little coverage outside of major villages. That's probably not anything, but outside of major metropolitan areas.
Major villages.
So
who is that other guy we were talking about? General Conspiracy or...
General Conjecture.
Too much off mic talk, yeah. Conjecture, yeah. Anyway,
my whole point was
our bonus
that
podcast. Anyway,
at points, my partner Abel was looking at me watching with this Sky Sports coverage, and it was just so badly pixelated that it was like the image when they're before on CSI Miami they say enhance, like it was that blurry, but the audio was super crisp. So I've got Crofty and Brundle on my ear going blah 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 blah. How great is this? Da, da, da. And I'm like, I can't see anything. It's just grey squares moving around a screen. But luckily, I came home and I managed to pick up where I'd left off because I recorded it. So what a lovely afternoon. But I had no one to share my excitement with because I was just off the boil, like just a little bit away from experiencing it live. So I'm glad to be talking to you about it now.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording how my watch was very similar. I had to keep pausing it and catching up later. So it means you can't tweet things during the race because, you'll be like, hey, what a great pit stop. And they'll be like, oh, the race is over, dude. Or you can't even check Twitter because the spoilers, and I hate spoilers. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I've had to introduce a policy at my work, 5-year no spoiler policy for any movie. So you're not allowed to spoil movies that are less than 5 years old. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'm just trying to think.
Just seems like common sense to me.
Just trying to go back 5 years. So that would be, you could have the second Avengers movie now spoiled for you, I think.
There you go.
Yeah,
sure.
There we are.
Don't do it.
No,
but
I'm not gonna
please don't do it.
No,
but in theory, I have no leg to stand on if you do. So yeah, anyway, not here to talk about spoilers. We're here to talk about F1. Let's get into the F1 intro. I've written one. Amazing. Zach, it's the Austrian Grand Prix. Who could forget such memorable Austrian races, such as we've had here in 1972, or the Eternal Classic race from 1975? Me, I would not remember those, although technically you have to know something to forget it. But once known as the Österreich Ring mobile phone company, A1 bankrolled the circuit and claimed naming rights between 1996 and 2003. Actually, it was only meant to be a 2-year deal, but they forgot about the contract and they just kept carrying over year after year without the benefit of additional talk and text. Zach, it's a bit of a yin-yang kind of track. Some bits black, some bits white, some bits bark, some bits bite. You say shark, I say, hey man, the number of the turns, 16, and I don't like Tire Wars. I might also add, apropos of nothing, that I don't like Peter Pan, Frankenstein, or Superman. Like an ice-cold Red Bull itself, Zach, this race was bubbly, kinetic, and it tasted like a piss-soaked battery. Let's charge the fuck up and amble to Austria, baby.
Wow, I am massively appreciative of the Queen references in there. Well done. That was your Bohemian Rhapsody.
Don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you mean.
No. I loved
Queen
it.
references. No.
I
wrote all of that. That's all original.
Yeah, it does. It feels original. It's got that classic Gordon taste, that aftertaste.
Okay. You're being obscure, but anyway, I wrote that. All of those words are mine. Nothing, no references to anything there. So anyway, Zach, let's Austria. Let's get into the race recap. Yeah. Here's the theme.
Let us race a bit. I gave him space. Suck my bones, man. Let's hurry up and get out of here. We've got a race to do.
Guess reading it back, it is a little bit like bicycle race. Zach, it's your turn to do the 30-second recap. Now, it's a we've had Rags to Riches story here. Usually there's nothing to talk about, and this time, oh boy, I don't know how you're going to wrap it all up in 30 seconds, but if you're ready, I can hit start on the timer.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
Everything was poised beautifully after what we could only dream of on Saturday, which was not Mercedes dominating qualifying. So we were left with the Charles Leclerc, the man who could we were all hoping, hold on to a win for once, but he did not count on Max bloody Verstappen at home, Red Bull's home, racing his way through, just being absolutely, the driver we all expect him to be now. And this was a little bit of a glimpse into the future. Mercedes couldn't follow. They had heating problems. Everybody else had a pretty good race, except for, we'll come to them, I'm sure. It was too much.
Man, I don't want to be harsh, but yeah, the time I got you on that one.
Absolutely nailed me. I had nowhere to go, nowhere to hide.
You needed to mention qualifying, especially because Leclerc on pole, Hamilton in P2, but dropping with a penalty, promoting Max Verstappen to the front row at the Red Bull Ring. You could just tell there was just something in the air. Everyone online was so excited. The tweets were just electric and everyone was just amped for this race. And thankfully, beyond being amped, we all plugged ourselves directly into the mains and got zapped because this race was so good. This is the best race for years.
Yeah, I mean, it had everything that doesn't play to Mercedes' strengths, which was so good because the heat was the problem. The setups weren't great for Mercedes. We know they don't follow very well. And all it really needed was for Verstappen and Leclerc to have a good start. And funnily enough, Verstappen didn't. It looked like the anti-stall kicked in off the start. And I thought that was kind of going to be it. It was like Charles Leclerc was in front by 2.5 seconds after one lap. And I thought he'd just run away with it, that we wouldn't see him again. And it kind of felt like that until much later when what felt like a really good strategy move to have Max Verstappen finishing was on the hards, right? There was He was putting in good times on the slowest tire, essentially. And at a point,
so the way it played out was that Verstappen qualified on the mediums, or the equivalent of the mediums, where Leclerc was on the softs. So Verstappen went almost 10 laps longer, and then by the time he came out on the hards, oh man, it's like they were a totally different tire. It's like they were softs.
Yeah, exactly.
He was so fast, and the last 25 laps was incredible.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. But it's like we finally saw it all at once that made Max Verstappen. It was like he was the driver that everybody was talking about. Even Christian Horner now is saying that he's the best driver on the grid after that win, easily. Now, we all know how Christian feels about Max. But there were, it felt like it was about 10 laps to go and he still needed to cover, maybe 8 seconds. I was like, no, I don't think he's going to catch Charles here. Ferrari probably been conserving, all that kind of stuff. And yet, suddenly, they got into a bit of traffic, and every single time they caught traffic, both him and Leclerc, Verstappen was just through.
Yeah, it really hurt.
He just got through right away. I loved the first time Max tried to get past Leclerc, and Leclerc just came straight back at him. It was like, I'm not giving up that inside line that easily. And after the race, Charles was like, yeah, the first bit of fighting was great because he left enough room for me, out of that next bend, and it was all good, and I managed to take the position back. But then the next time, Max was not going to be as kind and just kind of slammed the door on him and slammed his wheels into him. They kind of slammed into each other. How did you read the situation?
When I saw it live, I thought, yeah, that's fair. That he'll get away with that. That was fine. When I saw the replays and I started to see Verstappen's hands kind of moving around a little bit. He was sort of full lock, and then he was easing off, and then back into lock, and then away. And I thought that the stewards may, if anything, look at that as him just giving Leclerc a little bit of a nudge. Shutting the door, in theory, should have been fine because the line was his at that point, but I thought the stewards, if they wanted to be to the letter of the law very, very strict, could have plucked a penalty out of that. I think, though, after the last few weeks that we've had, the last few races that we've had, man, F1 needed a common sense, level-headed approach to this. The stewards officially found that no driver was predominantly at fault, even though there was a little bit of contact. The contact obviously didn't, qualify as a collision. I think what part of the problem with this was the wording of the regulations, because in Canada, when Verstappen got his penalty, the regulation that he broke clearly says you have to leave a car's width, and he clearly didn't do that, so it was a home run. And the regulations regarding this incident are much more vague and murky, and there's a lot more room for interpretation, and I think the stewards just made the right call for F1. It seems like, I don't know how, but as we get more and more technical with the regulations, Formula One has a way of just finding the grey area between the two rules, and then we make a rule right in the middle, and then it finds two more gaps that are smaller, but we still squeeze into them, and then they make another rule to shut the gap, and then they make another gap in between those two rules. So, I don't know what F1's doing, but we seem to keep falling down that rabbit hole. But anyway, look, the end result was really good. The stands were absolutely chock-a-block with orange-adorned Max Verstappen adoring fans. It was, dare I say that the scenes almost rivaled the likes of the Tifosi in Monza. I don't want to say for sure, they're on that level, but they certainly got that energy, that same energy, maybe at half capacity or something. But the Dutch Grand Prix, that is going to just friggin' go off next year, isn't it? Yeah, exactly, and it'll be. Your quote about it being kind of like the Tifosi, I think it's even more focused than that because it's just for Max. There is no sharing it amongst the team or whatever it is. It's just Max. It's not Red Bull or anything like that. They only care about Max. So it was an incredible performance. The quote, my little bit on that incident is the same as yours. I think that was a racing incident. I do like that. Verstappen's like, that's what racing's about, that's what it's for. And then, as like any Formula One driver, as soon as they're on the other side of it, they're always like, that was so unfair, how dare they, it's meant to be fair racing. Because he's been commenting on everybody else's incidents, and now he's having one himself. So I thought it was very interesting that afterwards he was like, of course it was fair. And Charles Leclerc was like, the first one was fair, and the second one, I'm sure the stewards will make the right call. And it was like, no, they won't, you're out, bye. I think all the talk was, if anything, what annoyed me about it, and you got Christian Horner saying, how could you give Max a penalty? Look at this atmosphere. Look at all the cheering fans. I'm like, well, that shouldn't affect whether you give him a penalty or not. If he's got a penalty, you give him one. If it's not, you don't. It should be clear cut. And I think they actually do need to look at the regulations to determine when you have to leave space and when you don't, and make it clear, if not for the drivers, at least for us, so that we're not, sitting around for 3 hours after a race waiting for a result to be confirmed. But, it was the talk about, oh, look at this. If this is what racing is about, this is what the passion is, that was all the stuff where I was like, none of that is in the regulations though. Just give us something concrete. But look, it was a really good result. I think actually the second year in a row that Verstappen's won at the Red Bull Ring, so at a track that they probably shouldn't be very strong at, he seems to do quite well there. Where there's lots of other notes about other drivers and people maybe not doing so well, even though it was a quite exciting race. Well, let's just sit on from the winners. Why don't we sit on the fact that you're right, that Red Bull
shouldn't necessarily be super strong. And it was very good for Honda to have their first win since 2003 or some insane stat like that. With Jenson Button, that was the last time Honda won, and they just looked ecstatic. They've been putting in so much hard work. All of the people at Honda, massive congratulations, because they've done such great work trying to get that to a point that makes sense. That the engine makes sense. Christian Horner during the race was like, it'd be nice to get a little bit more power out of the unit, but focus on reliability and just good race weekends, which is what they got. Except if you're Pierre Gasly, he got lapped by his teammate, and that's not a good look for anyone. He's not the only team member to be lapped by his teammate this weekend, which was George Russell lapping Robert Kubica. But we'll come a little bit more.
You mean driver of the day, Robert Kubica?
I mean driver of the day, server farm fault in Poland, Robert Kubica. I don't know, did they maybe miscount the votes? I didn't even see his race, so I don't know what they were basing that on. Yeah. Did he have some good radio calls or something?
You could have told me that he retired on lap 3 and I wouldn't have known that. Well, I couldn't have been able to prove you otherwise.
No, but what does this do?
Yeah, driver of the day is officially dead. We can just don't even bother with that anymore because it means nothing. Yeah, it's a joke.
So what does this mean for Pierre Gasly? He's looking up the field and Max Verstappen overtook Vettel, Bottas and Leclerc for the win after a horrible start. And Gasly couldn't get past Norris. So I'm not quite sure how Pierre Gasly can still be... I mean, it's not been the easiest transition, but he could be the worst as far... I don't have the stats in front of me, but he hasn't had a very good start to his career at Red Bull as being someone who's promoted from Toro Rosso. I know lots of people have a bad run, and Brendan Hartley at Toro Rosso had a bad run as well, but this Red Bull car is pretty good. He should be doing much better.
Sometimes... you'll have drivers with different driving styles in the same team, and the team still has to design the car to a certain philosophy. Sometimes that will mitigate the difference between the styles, and they'll split the difference and compromise, or try and add a little bit there for this guy, add a little bit here for this guy, and still try and eke out some performance for both of them at the same time, recognizing that, if one has a bad week, the other one will make up the difference. Maybe they're just not doing that at Red Bull. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe Gasly was just overhyped and just hasn't got the confidence. Maybe he needs to WhatsApp Robert
Kubica,
Romain Grosjean, and ask him for his mental conditioning coach or whatever it was. But every week from now on, Gasly needs to do better than the week before, and sadly, he's just been getting worse and worse. I tweeted at the start of the race that Verstappen's start was so terrible that he's on the same piece of track with Gasly. That's how bad it is. That's when you know it's dire straits, when you're next to your teammate, because these two have been class apart.
Yeah, they have. Giovinazzi and Kimi Räikkönen both out-qualified Pierre Gasly. Kimi Räikkönen provided a huge amount of fun at the start. He was fourth for a while and was defending positions and making he was
one of the better races, I would say.
Yeah, no one was getting past him on the inside. He would just sit on those lines and defend, which made it very, very, very fun. So I would like to see more from that, and a good turnout for Giovinazzi as well. So they finished 9th and 10th, which the Alfa Romeo hasn't looked great, but that was a very good weekend for them.
Giovinazzi gets his first points in F1. Yay! And who was it? Frederick Vasseur, the team principal, was chasing him around cutting his hair. Apparently he had a bet that if Giovinazzi gets points, he has to cut his hair off, and he was literally just chasing him around, grabbed a clump of his hair and cut it off. Nice. That was fun. But I was going to say, if you wanted to be... if you didn't want to be generous to this race, if you had to find fault, it was maybe that there weren't that many battles. And even though Verstappen obviously was thrilling, watching him charge to the front and overtake for the lead and all the rest of it, he didn't really seem to... He had such an advantage that he wasn't really battling too much. The biggest battle was with Leclerc, and even then that was only 2-3 laps, something like that. But the battle was coming from those Alfa Romeo drivers, not Alfa drivers as in... I'm an alpha male. Although Kimi, maybe. Giovinazzi with that hair, maybe not. But yeah, that was where the battle was. That was where the ongoing lap after lap after lap tension, take a bite out of me, I'll take a bit out of you. That was all coming from them. So I appreciated that. But Zach, I want to go into some of the things that didn't go so well this race, because there's actually a few, and it involves a lot of the front runners. So maybe we start with Vettel and his pit stop.
Yeah, let's do it.
The shades of Ricciardo in Monaco a few years ago, where he pulls in and not too. There's a deficit between the number of tyres that he needs and the number of tyres that are ready.
Yeah, it turned out that they made a very late call that his radio message didn't get through to the engineers. So they were like,
that's what I heard.
So some of the engineers were out there to pull aside their air piping and stuff, which they moved some stuff out of the way so that if the Mercedes is in the pit box in front of you, you move your stuff out of the way so that the driver from the other team can really simply move into their setup and not also tear down your pit setup as well. So a few engineers were already out doing that style of stuff, and then they were like, "Oh shit, there's Sebastian Vettel, quick!" And it had worked really well.
He drove a car.
Yeah, it had worked really well because Bottas had to be held. Was it Bottas? Had to be held so that he didn't give an unsafe release. So it was all kind of going to work, but they just weren't ready. Which I am always utterly perplexed to how this can happen in Formula One these days. When I know that he's coming into the pits. Get out there. Get the tyres ready. Like, he's there.
Well, they've only got 2 cars to watch. I mean, as a spectator, we're in theory watching 20 cars, and we know when he's coming in. But yeah, it was weird. And I think, given the final result, where Vettel was only less than a second behind the podium positions to lose, I think he lost nearly 3 or 4 seconds in that pit stop. That really hurts. And then there's the pit call for Leclerc, who came in arguably a little bit early because of the Mercedes sort of pits, and then they pit Leclerc, and it's like, well, I know you're on softs and you maybe couldn't have stretched it out too much more, but Verstappen having that huge advantage by pitting later just really killed his chances of holding on to the win because, I don't know, I mean, you could argue it either way, but I mean, the overtake for the lead only came in the dying lap, so if he'd been able to stretch out another 3 laps, say, even if he was a few seconds off, he might have had more of a chance of holding off Verstappen at the end, so I'm just not sure that the pit call for Leclerc was right as well. Hamilton, I don't know what happened to Lewis Hamilton this whole weekend, but it was not good. Obviously, didn't take pole, number one, which he's the pole man. He's Mr. Pole, other than Robert Kubica. And missed out on pole, got a penalty for impeding Raikkonen during qualifying, which I don't know if you saw this, but this one too, very technical. And if you weren't watching, if you weren't a fan of the sport and you saw this, you would just be like, I don't understand what he did, but it was wrong. He clearly impeded Raikkonen, but just made such a small impression and such a small dint on Raikkonen's lap and overall qualifying performance. Really, it was just nothing. It affected nothing, but obviously drops Hamilton off the front row. So the effects on his race were huge.
Should we?
But then, yeah, go on.
No, you finish your thought about Hamilton, and I want to talk about qualifying a little bit.
A little bit of well, you could argue it was a bit of a scrappy qualifying, even though I've kind of made an argument there that it wasn't that big a deal. But he got a penalty for it, and he should have done better. Constantly going off the track, running over the curbs, breaks his front wing and has to pit, cost him P4, saves Vettel's bacon, because Bacon was
Vettel.
Vettel was running in 5th and Hamilton 4th. Hamilton had to pit for a new wing, which elevated Vettel into P4, and then he was able to close the gap on Bottas. But it was not looking so good for Hamilton. So I mean, at a race where he might not have won, he actually became like Mr. Anonymous because he wasn't even contention for the podium.
Yeah, he just totally disappeared. I feel like I haven't heard from him. I hadn't seen him in a picture it's been a while now.
Worried about him.
Yeah,
haven't heard from you. You don't call anymore.
Send me a message, Lewis, to let me know you're okay.
Yeah, what's happening, man?
Yeah, maybe he's just taking a breather. Look, he's old, like Sebastian Vettel. He's old. The young guys are, the 21-year-olds are chasing.
Got to have a break. These back-to-back races, they take it out of you.
They really do.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say about qualifying.
Yeah.
In the land of penalties, there's been a lot of talk about how many penalties are being dished out, and we should just let people race. The Ted Kravitz idea of just throw the rule book out, although he loves notebooks and books. That's not a direct quote.
Ironic.
But why is it that we still stick with this qualifying format? I like the knockout idea, but there is enough room on the track to run like 5 cars at once. Why don't we run them in groups? Like, that's what they do in Formula E, I'm pretty sure, last time I watched it. Why do we just just put everybody out there, make it all happen right now? It's like, just let teams go out for, they should have buffers between each of them so they can't impede each other. And they should just run, you just get your few goes over 10 minutes, here's your turns. You get 2 turns, go. for Q1. Here's your 2 turns for Q2 and your 2 turns for Q3. The track's not going to change that drastically. It would over an hour, or if you did it over an hour and a half, but because you've got Q1, Q2, Q3, generally speaking, the track keeps a good level of similarity between a first run and a second run in the same queue. So this just seems to happen every race weekend. Half the field goes at least once during qualifying, depending on how long they're in it for. Half the field is impeded in some way or another. Because the idea of running 20 cars around for 17 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is in Q1, I should know, seems impossible. Of course people are going to be impeded.
I don't know if you've seen this racetrack, but there's literally only 2 corners.
Yeah.
It's so small. Like, the thought of fitting 20 cars in there without them impeding is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what we could do. I had a similar thought where I was like, oh man, I remember those days where they would just send out one car after another to just set one lap. That was it, one chance. That was your whole chance at getting pole, was just one lap, one out lap, a hot lap, one in lap. That's it. We really kind of need to do something like that. I mean, I am a fan of the current qualifying format, and every time we change it, we seem to fuck it up. So I just don't know. I'd rather they stick with this than mess it up again, but it would be nice sometimes to have something just a little bit different.
Well, it's the penalties that annoy me. I think that if you didn't have those kinds of penalties, because you're right, kind of other than outside of the top 10, and as we saw this week, the top 10, even if they have really horrible starts, can come back through the field. But it matters a lot that if you get a 3-place grid penalty in your racing point, taking you maybe from 8th to 11th can have a huge impact on your race and your strategy and all those kinds of things. And that's big money points for those teams. Finishing out the top 10 can be massive for them. So they tend to, then they start to think about, well, should this just be the weekend we take a big hit and we'll swap our engine out or something like that. It just starts to fiddle with the sport in ways that I don't think make sense to people, especially maybe the Drive to Survive crew who are all watching the sport now. That's the kind of stuff that even I don't really understand super well. Don't know. Maybe it is time for a rethink.
Maybe it is. I'll tell you someone who isn't rethinking something. King of the segue over here. McLaren, because man, they had a good race, and poor old Carlos Sainz took an engine penalty and started from the back of the grid.
House.
But Lando Norris was the real story, qualifying in 6th place, and he tweeted out he was so excited, 6th, and then he got elevated up to 5th. He was like, 5th. Started in 5th, and you might think, oh yeah, but you're in a McLaren, you'll probably just fall back out of the points and then maybe scrap it in for 1 or 2 in 9th or 10th. But man, held it together, had really good pace, ended up getting lapped, but still finishing in 6th, not far off the leaders, really. Both McLarens getting into the points, so Carlos Sainz also jumping back up. It'd be interesting to see what he could have done if he didn't have a qualifying problem, but really good signs from McLaren, and I would say, given that they've had a couple of good results for the last few races and the characteristics of the last few tracks being quite different, see Mercedes being ultra dominant last race to being really nowhere this race, it's kind of spelling good things for the direction that McLaren are going, eh?
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned Carlos Sainz as well, so good signs for Sainz and Norris. It's all clicking.
Good. Where are you going to go from there? Good signs for Sainz, and Norris was no risk.
No risk for Norris, and good signs for Sainz. Okay. So it's all pointing in the right, all racing point in the right direction. And this has been my.
You went too far and ruined it. Go on, sorry, make your point. I'll stop interrupting, Ridley. Make your point.
My point is that hopefully they can just stay really competitive, because if Red Bull, or at least one half of the Red Bull garage, are making gains into the Mercedes and partly Ferrari dominance, then it would be nice for McLaren to maybe start putting their heads above everybody else in Formula 1.5 and putting some problems in amongst the other teams at the front around just putting a bit of pressure on in qualifying. Pressure's on at the start. There's nothing we all hate more than first lap's done and then we're like, all right, now everybody's 3 seconds apart and we'll see you at the end. Really, by having someone like McLaren at the front there as well, it just tightens everything up a bit. It just puts a little bit more pressure on everyone to really race really carefully and put everything into it. So I am a massive fan of that. And it's been funny these last 24 hours because obviously Lando Norris was getting a lot of really positive coverage. But then I feel like there's been 2 times as much coverage. Everybody going, hey, don't forget about science. It's like, I can't, because that's all anybody's talking about, how we shouldn't forget about how good of a race Carlos Sainz Jr. had. So well done.
True.
You did it, McLaren. Just could you go around and see the Renault boys and maybe give them a little bit of help as well?
I was going to say, to underline how tight it is in that midfield and how there's just no room for errors, here's the teams that didn't get any points whatsoever this race. Racing Point, formerly Force India, regularly in the points. Renault, regularly in the points. No points this race. Toro Rosso and Haas. So, I mean, all 4 of those teams would count on leaving with some points at more or less every race. All 4 of them leaving with zilch. Big goose egg.
I loved that Daniel Ricciardo overtook Hulkenberg on the last lap.
Means nothing. No points. Nothing at risk. Literally just, I can get you, and I did get you.
Yeah, he just wants to keep the ledger firmly in his favour, qualifying and
That's
races.
true.
So it's looking good. He said something very cryptic, Daniel Ricciardo, on Instagram today. It was like, had a big think. It's nice up here in the clouds on the plane. Spent half my life up here. Had a big think and made a decision about one big thing. I'm like, well, what is it? Like, what are you going to... like what? Like, you're going to move teams or again? That can't be it. You're going to...
Yeah, where's he going to go?
Settle down, have kids? I don't know. What is it? Like, what's the big decision? Oh, I really... You don't have Daniel's number, do you? Call him up, find out what the big decision is.
I mean, I've got him on WhatsApp, but that's about it. I just keep mentioning WhatsApp. I'm not even on it. I don't use it. I think it's dumb. But, yeah, I don't know. A big decision for Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know. Is he going to change heritage and go back to being Italian? Like, is he going to... He's probably got a dual passport, right? Probably got an Italian-Australian passport due to Section 44 style, lineage. Right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I reckon so.
Maybe that's it. Maybe he's like, hey,
grazie.
Italian drivers have a lot more success than Australian drivers, and he twirls his mustache.
Do they?
Interesting.
Who are the world champion Formula One drivers from Italy?
I mean, back in the old days, there was Pasta Tony and Alleghetti, and then there's Falaralezzi, Faloni.
Yes, and
Fakinonami.
Fakinonami. I love Fakinonami.
Fakinonami, yeah.
Yeah, it's all the pronunciation of Fakinonami.
His life was cut short, tragically. Too soon.
Wow.
Gone but not forgotten.
Sorry, it just got distracted by the forklift man out the front, just popped the biggest, just full 360 at high speed. So good. I thought it was going to tip over. It was up on 2 wheels.
That.
So good. Anything else you want to say about the F1 Österreich Grand Prix?
Nah, man.
Oh, man.
Good show, F1. F1's okay. It's okay with me.
Do we agree that this is the glimpse of the future? Leclerc, Verstappen for forevermore?
I was thinking about this. That we haven't even seen really. I mean, Norris, I guess, unlocked some of his potential, but there's George Russell still to come. And then next year there'll be some other young drivers in there. And I mean, man, F1's in good hands, eh?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing okay. Let's move on to fantasy focus. Actually, big news just at hand. Fantasy isn't happening anymore. It's just done. We don't need to talk about it, and the whole league has been deleted. So there's no results to read, sadly.
See just when I pressed the button that said, "Where am I in the standings?" and it showed me. Look, I lost.
Gotta go.
I lost the place. I definitely lost the place, and that happens. I'm now F1 Statsman has overtaken me. I'm guessing that's because they're a pro user. But Rod, you seem to have. I don't know where I can't even find you anymore. It seems like you've lost 7 positions or something. Yeah, down to 50. So I'm now winning. I am the winner, and you are the loser. So take that. But
what hurts so much? I checked my team, and I don't know how this happened, but I still had Grosjean and Haas in my picks. I had Grosjean as a driver and Haas as a team, and I got rid of them. And I was like, "You're a bloody genius, Rod. What has held you back? They've held you back for too long. You're going to charge forward now." I fall back 7 places. How does this even happen?
Well, who did you swap them out for?
Just not on.
Did you swap them out for Kubica and Russell? I mean, that's...
I put it in for Kubica, apparently driver of the day. He gets you no points.
Gets you no
it's
points.
Crazy.
No points. My predictions were no good this week. Congratulations to everybody who predicted not Lewis Hamilton for something, because I sure did. Picked him for everything. I picked him for 2 safety cars as well. But no, nothing. Congratulations.
Their chickens are finally coming home to roost, aren't they?
They really are. Over and out. Now our new league leader, Scuderia Benetti, jumped 5 positions, a huge points haul to be leading the table now in front of Hawk Moon Racing, James Ward, and Lincoln the Naughty Dog. So major shufflings happening at the front, but everything is still very close, very, very, very close indeed. Let me just pull up the results just specifically for Austria, who won this week. It was Scuderia Benetti with 193 points, just massive. And old friend of the show, Drew, came second in there with the Tifosi boys, 170 points. So a nice, clean 9 positions jumped up for Drew. Congratulations, and congratulations to everybody for competing. It's not too late to join, so if you're a fan and you want to get involved in some fantasy, even start practicing for the second half of the season, now's a good time to jump in. So get involved. fantasygp.com.
Yeah. Sit there and visualize how you're going to hit those buttons that pick the drivers and the teams. Zach, let's just get away from this as fast as we can, because it's bloody embarrassing. Let's get into the super quiz.
We will accept a couple of questions. Should one only win one? Would one want to have won that one in round 1?
Can you repeat the question?
Zach, time for me to redeem myself with a super quiz, and this time I wrote all the questions. That gives me 4 marks, so well done, Rod. That's a lay down misere, my friend. Zach, we touched on how great qualifying was and how it set up the race. We had recently Kimi Räikkönen making comments along the lines of how the start is the best part of the race, and seeing all the cars line up on the grid, that anticipation for those red lights to go, the atmosphere that's created at the start of the grid, and with Leclerc and Verstappen setting the new record for the youngest front row of the grid, I wanted to do a front row quiz all about the Austrian Grand Prix. That's how niche we're getting these days. Done over 140 quizzes. This quiz is just about the front row at the Austrian Grand Prix for the last 5 years since the, now 6, since the race was reintroduced to the Red Bull Ring. So, the customary intro to the quiz, Zach. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions for you. We're going to start from last year and work all the way back to 2014. So again, this is about the front row of the Austrian Grand Prix. Every question is about that.
Okay.
So we'll start at 2018. Last year, qualifying, we saw an all-Mercedes front row. The question for you, Zach, to start us off is who took pole and who started alongside pole sitter in P2?
Ooh, I reckon this was one of the ones where Valtteri Bottas was like, you know what, I'm actually pretty good at qualifying, and got a good exit right at the end and took it right from underneath Hamilton's nose, and he had a bad exit. Maybe I imagine that, but I'm going to say Bottas 1, Hamilton 2.
Ding, ding, ding. Bottas 1, Hamilton 2. Very well done. We go back another 12 months. In 2017, again, the front row of the Austrian Grand Prix, Hamilton had a troubled qualifying that mirrored this year's qualifying in 2 ways. So he didn't make it onto the front row, but tell me the 2 problems that he had that were similar to this year.
The second problem, so other than the fact that he wasn't on the front row, or there's 2 other things?
Specifically,
okay. That's all right. We'll
yeah,
look at that.
Go on.
Did he get
You're talking all around one of them, but yeah.
So he didn't start on the front row. Mm-hmm. And was it because he also had a penalty for, maybe not for impeding, but he might have had to replace something in his car?
Exactly right. So a grid drop for a gearbox change, and he failed to take pole position was what I was sniffing around for. But you got it all there. That's all there. You've done very well.
Thank you.
It's like you watch these races, Zach. It's like you did a podcast about them.
Yeah.
Okay, that was 2017. Step back in time to 2016.
Heady days.
Front row. Heady days.
It was in my late 20s.
Summer of love, etc. In 2016, which driver secured their second front row start?
In 2016, what driver secured their second front row start? Was it Daniel Ricciardo?
No, it was not. It was Mr. Germany himself, Nico Hülkenberg.
Oh, right!
His second career front row start 3 years ago in Austria. And, of course, he starts on the front row, so he goes on to win and claim his first podium. No, just kidding. Of course, he's never done that. He retired late in the race.
And he's done that.
60 laps.
He's definitely done that before.
Boy. Mr. Retirement. But I mean, I guess it's better to have started on the front row and lost than to have never started on the front row, hey? It's almost
Look,
as good as a win.
if you could only go to the show once or twice in your life, you might as well buy front row tickets and splurge. And that's what you do.
may as well. All right, Zach, the questions are getting harder. The years are getting older. We wind back the clock to 2015.
Whoa!
Mercedes again claims a dominant 1-2 front row lockout. Hamilton pipped Rosberg for pole on that day. But what was strange about Rosberg's times across the sessions?
Oh, what was strange about his times across the sessions? What was strange? I feel like he set an incredible time in maybe like the first or second session that was like, oh man, no one's ever going to beat that. And then the times got slower in the last session. So I'm going to say he set his fastest time for qualifying outside of the final session.
Doing yourself very proud, and I'm welling up a little bit here. I'm so bloody proud to do a podcast with you. His time in Q2 was faster than it was in Q3. Incredible.
How did I remember that?
Hamilton set a faster lap, the track gets faster. Rosberg somehow gets slower, but that's okay. He's a bit of a mystery around this track. Couldn't get outside the scope of front row qualifying in Austria, but yeah, he's a bit of a loose unit around here. All right, let's wind the clock back all the way to 2014. Zach, which team?
Did you say? Wine Leclerc?
The calendar. Back. Wine, did you say wine? Did you say no risk? Did you say Lando no risk? It's like 2014. Which team secured their 60-second front row lockout at the Austrian Grand Prix in 2014? Which team secured their 60-second front row lockout?
The Austrian Grand Prix in 2014. 2014. 2014. Mm-hmm. Sebastian Vettel was doing really badly, so it wasn't Red Bull. Sebastian Vettel didn't even want to drive that car, it turned out. Who else was good there? God, was it... Or was Ferrari good there? Yeah, they were getting better. Was it Ferrari? No, they've had way more than 62 front row lockouts. But no, I'm just going to guess that it is Ferrari, because maybe they haven't had that many front row lockouts, because they've always had a number 1 and a number 2. Ferrari.
Just stay quiet and let you hang yourself with that rope. No, it's not Ferrari. It was Williams. Remember? Felipe Massa, Valtteri Bottas claiming front. Exactly. It was a freak win. Oh, the car was pretty good in 2014, but not really. They had no business being a front row lockout. Massa claimed pole over Valtteri Bottas.
That was right. That was the big Massa thing. The last time we did something cool.
Mm-hmm. The big Massa thing. That's the name of the episode, everybody. Zach, you still did pretty well. Really curly ones at the end there. I can't believe you got that one about Rosberg being faster in Q2 than Q3. Give yourself an uppercut, my friend. You've done very well there.
I got the hard one and not the easy one about Williams locking in the front row. You'd think that was memorable. And now they're lapping each other around the back at the back of the grid.
Yeah.
How the muddy are falling.
For driver of the day honours. So it's all there to play for.
True. Maybe then next year they'll get points for that.
Well, I mean, I don't see why not, because you may as well just give a point for anything. It means nothing. Do you know who got the fastest lap this race? I bet you don't even know.
Yeah, Max Verstappen. He got 26 points.
Lucky guess. All right, Mr. Golden Touch. All right. Well, we've done the race recap. We've done the fantasy look, although I've forgotten the results already about that one. And the Super Quiz, you did incredibly well. So it's time for a final thought, Zach. You got a final thought from the week?
Gosh, do I have a final thought for the week? What I feel like is that there is maybe not as much news around Formula One, like everything all at once, since now that we're kind of a couple of years into the Liberty Media ownership, it feels like there's less talk about the sport overall, like in the news. Even though we've been going through a bit of a dry spell as far as like how interesting the races have been, I feel like I'm seeing less like controversy around the sport or big news stories around the sport rising to the surface. Everything seems pretty settled right now. I mean, you hear the occasional thing about, can Max Verstappen, what's the exit clause on his contract? You know, if Mercedes or Ferrari come knocking, will he go? Why would want to go to Ferrari? I don't know. Although imagine a Verstappen Leclerc Ferrari team. That would be fucking awesome. I'd love that. They would fight every day. It'd be great. But yeah, I don't feel like maybe there's not as much of the rumour, which is maybe a good thing. Maybe things have just really tightened up there, and Bernie Eccleston isn't stoking those fires every day. What do you reckon?
I wonder if part of that, though, is just, number one, last year for F1 News was completely bonkers. Drivers switching, going everywhere, Fernando retiring.
Yeah, teams changing hands.
Yeah, exactly. Ricciardo kickstarting the driver market in a way that we've really never seen before in decades and decades by switching. I don't know. Maybe it's just part of that. Maybe it's also because you living in Britain, and it's already pretty much like solid coverage everywhere. Like F1's, on the back page of the newspaper and stuff. It's like there's not much more that they could do to cover it. It was only ever going to go back. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I wonder what you would think. I wonder what people who live in the US would say about that, whether they would be like, nah, man, you never used to read about Formula One, and now it's got a little column or there's a little splash on this website, and all of a sudden it's starting to sprinkle across in areas where it wasn't before. I just wonder if other people would find they've had the opposite effect to you.
Yeah, I wonder. I'd love to hear more about that. What was your final thought?
Final thought, Zach. I've cracked it open. There's a mystery. There's a huge conspiracy in Formula One. I can't believe we didn't lead with this. Everybody put your tinfoil hats on right now. Crack the code. Lando Norris is a vampire. Just saying. I don't know if you've been following us on Twitter. I tweeted out the proof. Everyone run to Twitter now and look up Super License before they take it down, before the man, reports it to Twitter and they have to take it offline because it's so explosive. So you remember Marcus Ericsson, confirmed vampire?
Yes.
Marcus Ericsson was in Austria this weekend. There's a photo of Lando Norris running around in the paddock, and he's like running alongside one of those big sort of trucks where they have all the tires and stuff, and there's no reflection, absolutely no reflection.
Right.
Now, who famously has no reflection, Zach? It's vampires, right?
Marcus Ericsson. Famously no
Marcus
reflection.
Ericsson is famously. That's why, the drivers would always say, I'm looking at my mirrors, there's no car there. Next thing I know, Marcus Ericsson gone past me.
It's also why he didn't go further in Formula One. He couldn't self-reflect.
It's true. No self-reflection.
Yeah.
You need self-reflection to get away. Although, having said that, with his new vampire powers, Lando Norris, from out of nowhere, has the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
Well, maybe he'll be better at the night races as well. Come on, Singapore. His natural
could only be better,
habitat.
right?
Yeah.
Could only be better. So, there you go. It's out there. I mean, if this podcast disappears after this episode, you know what's happened. They got us.
They got us. That's it. And pick up the torch. If we are just taken away like that, remember, you can pick up the torch and continue to face conspiracies head on.
Please do. But I'm not even kidding. Check the proof. Twitter. We're on Twitter at Superlicense. You can also join our Facebook group, Superlicense Universe, while it lasts before we become members of the undead. Yeah, Zach, I also wanted to shout out the members of the Superlicense Club, the fabulous members of the Superlicense Club, because they're probably due an episode of Drift soon, but also we got our server bill today, and just nothing like a server bill to remind you. Man, the Superlicense Club members are all bloody legends, all of them. So thank you very much, guys.
Server bill. Well, that's the kind of... Do you think everybody in the future will have server bills?
Bill,
because
there's major construction, and then there's...
General conjecture.
Yeah, that's just a joke for you and me.
I mean, that's the secret to this podcast, though. Jokes just for you and me, and then other people seem to enjoy them, which is great. I mean, thank you so much to the Super License Club, because it's something that Rod and I kind of on a monthly schedule tend to talk about, the costs that go into running this show, because we love doing it, but the people who are kind enough to jump on the Patreon and give some of their hard-earned. We really, really, really appreciate it. And there is definitely a drift coming up very soon. So if you too would like to become a Super License Club member, you can go to our Patreon page. You can find a link on superlicense.com.au, Rod. That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There is a link there.
That's it. And click on Club, and there's a link there to join the Patreon, or just check our Twitter. There's usually links out to Patreon on Twitter. We were giving away some sets of wooden coasters with our logo burned into them with a freaking laser. So laser etched Super License logo on a pure wooden coaster. Feedback is everybody opens the box, and that wood smell just hits you in the face, and it just smells so damn good. So if you want your drinks to rest on something stylish and elegant, like a nice smelling coaster, your last chance to join the Super License Club. We've given away 5 sets to 5 thrilled, incredibly happy Super License Club members. Last chance to join and get one of those. The next batch of 5 are going out very soon. You need to be a member to go in the running to get one of those. But look, we've had a couple of members join recently with some very generous donations, and it's very, very much appreciated. Thank you so much, guys. Zach, I think that's about all the time. I always love at the end of a podcast when they're like, we've run out of time. We've only got time to do this thing. And it's like, it's a podcast, dude. The internet goes forever. There's no time. But Zach, unfortunately, we have run out of time and we need to wrap up the show. Any last words before we kick it home?
Lando, if you're around, I'd love to become a vampire, mate. So, give me a gnaw on my neck whenever you see me. go for it.
Did you say?
Lando Nor on my neck.
Lando Nor. You are in the sin bin, my friend. I might need a new host next week. Till then, my name's been Rodney.
My name's been Zach.
We'll see you in the afterlife. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Do the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Great.